welcome to another exciting episode of the Weekly Shonen Jump Breakdown for the week of November 6th, 2017. Completely forgot the date for a second there. We have a lot of ground to cover, so we are going to blitz through this most likely until I get stopped talking about something specifically. Because this was a really long chapter, or a really long issue of Jump this week, which is not always a bad thing. I enjoyed most of what I read this week, so. But we'll get started with We Never Learned 38. On a clamorous night, X cannot study. So we got some beautiful, beautiful color pages today, including a festival color page and a study time color page, and this, of course, is prefacing the festival chapter that is to come, but I absolutely love seeing these color pages. It's always great to see the girls in color, and Yuiga himself, when we get to see him in color, just because so often we see him black and white, and we don't think about the fact that Asumi's hair is purple. Okay, sure, why not? Alright, yeah, I like it. Let's go. Maybe one day we'll get an anime adaptation. As it is, though, this is a really fun chapter. It's a really fun festival chapter, and there's a lot of little things, as Yuika gets to spend a little bit of time at the festival with each of the girls. Not a lot of time with some of them, but a little bit. You'll have to forgive me. I'm still recovering from my sickness, and so you might be able to hear it in my breathing a little bit, but we're going to keep going regardless. You get some of my favorite moments anyway, were Furuhashi being called Big Sis by Yuiga's siblings. I really liked that because she came over to help him cook. It's a nice callback. And then the entire family giving him a thumbs up and telling him to go hang out with these girls at the festival. That was really good in my opinion. Takamoto, of course, is being super awkward around him because things are still a little strange when it's just the two of them together. And Yuiga did tell him that he thought that they looked good in their kimonos. And specifically Furuhashi, which I thought was a nice touch. Because yes, that was a joke about her not having a lot in the chess department, but it was also a reference to the fact that she enjoys literature and, clearly fits the bill more as someone who would enjoy being in a kimono. I really like Furuhashi. I wish that she got more play in some of the other departments, because she gets a lot of play in the gag and a lot of play in the I'm going to cover for you and take care of you department. But at the same time, you also get Yuiga leaving Takamoto at the udon stand when he goes to help Ogata and then never coming back for her. And I feel like that's going to get called back to at some point, because I'm sure she probably waited around knowing her. But the stuff with the deliveries was really fun. Everything to do with Yuiga trying not to think about how cute the girls are over the course of the night and trying to keep his mind focused. I thought that was really fun. The moment where you can tell Ogata really, really wants some of that apricot candy, and Yuiga feeds it to her because her hands are full. So yes, technically, he could have taken the things from her and let her eat. But at the same time, that's not the first thing either of them thought of, and they both seem super comfortable with him feeding her. So hey, that's up to them. I'm not gonna call shade on that. Past that, things get a little ridiculous, but ridiculous in a good way, in my opinion. Where you run into Kurisu, best girl, and she is winning a bunch of competitions with a mask on, because nobody can stop her, because she's really good at this shooting competition, apparently. I believe it was called Sharpshooter, and Yuiga finds her, recognizes her, she tries to run, she trips, she gets hurt. So then he takes her to the first aid tent, which is where they run into Asumi, and Asumi's dad. You get the moment where Yuiga has to try and help him out, and help out Kurisu, and he is far closer to her body than he had expected to be. Cat just ran through the background. And is having a tough time of it, and then she makes a pained moan, and he just has this scene that's just... It's like, yes, this is exactly how I expect Yuiga to react. And one of my favorite things, again, I don't mean to, because we do need to move through these today, I don't mean to just hang on We Never Learn forever like I always do. But one of my favorite things about Yuiga as a harem protagonist is that we actually do get to see him affected by these things. most harem protagonists are just like, I didn't even notice how close I was to you. Whereas you have your rare harem protagonists that absolutely do and try to act normal anyway. And of course, then you also have like Hyodo Issei, who's just like, "Ooh, yeah!" So, I appreciate it personally. You get that really nice moment where Asumi is like, "Next time, let's spend the day at the festival together." And you can tell she means it, even though she says she's joking. And it almost feels like Yuiga recognizes that too, when he's like, "Why would you joke about something like that?" The coup de grace of this chapter, in my opinion, is when Yuiga's super excited to get to leave. Because it's almost time for the last train and he doesn't want to miss it. And he wants to get home so he can study. He's got a lot of studying still planned. And he sees this little girl lost on the street. And the cut of just Yuiga screaming, "Oh no," while going to help this child and then immediately just running off. It's amazing. It's amazing. My biggest question from this, who is the girl? Obviously, that's everybody's question, I'm sure. It could be Sekijo, because she didn't get any time in this chapter at all. It could be his sister come to look for him, because she also didn't get any time in this chapter, and it feels a little weird that the family went to the festival without her. It could be Furuhashi, because she kind of got the short end of the stick this chapter. Or it could be a new girl. We could have, like, maybe one or two more, and that'd be about it, I would say. But hey, we could. I don't know that I want any new girls, but I also didn't want any new girls when Asumi showed up, and she's great, so hey. We'll see. My money, honestly, is on it being either Sekijo or his sister, but we'll find out. All in all, this was a great chapter. I absolutely loved it. The jumping between the different girls constantly. This chapter almost felt like a full episode of an anime. And if this show ever does get an anime, I expect this to be a full episode. Hello, buddy. How's it going? Yeah? Just scared the crud out of me. What are you doing? What are you doing? I have not been home for long because I was at a 25-hour live stream for Extra Life. And so the cats have missed me. And I don't know if you could notice that or not. I don't know if you could tell. But we will move on. Next up, we have Rurouni Kenshin, the Hokkaido Arc, Chapter 3. And this was a really good chapter, in my opinion. Everything to do with Yahiko fighting Kenshin, and they don't want Kaoru to see, and the 4 emperors of the Kamiya Dojo don't like that. I thought that was a really good gag, because there's clearly only 2 of them that actually care, and then one of them that's been roped into it. There's that moment where Yahiko says that Kaoru's she's increased her worries since becoming a mom, and Kenshin's reply is that her kindness has increased. The fight's actually really good between the 2 of them, but eventually Kenshin does win it. But he has to go all out. He has to pull out the 8... Is it 8? It's 9-headed dragon. The 9-headed dragon. And Yahiko makes it to 5 before he's beaten. It's like, yeah, it's pretty good. You also have that really good moment where Yahiko tells him to go all out, tells him to pretend that he's a villain, like what he would have fought in Shushio's rebellion. And Kenshin basically just tells him, I couldn't even begin to imagine you as a villain. So instead, I'll think of you as a shogunate samurai who puts his life on the line. And it's like, oh, man. These 2 characters have gone through so much together over the course of their entire arcs. And this chapter really was mainly character development, but it was character development in my favorite way possible. Where we got to see a side character and how he felt about what was going on. And so, Kenshin beats Yahiko and everything works out there. Kenshin's clearly proven his strength still. He can still fight. Yahiko makes the comment that Kaoru was right, that his stamina's down. And they're both like, but she's never fought Kenshin. How would she know his stamina is down? And everyone else knows why, but they don't, so that's pretty good. That's a good gag. I've always loved Kenshin as a character, and I always thought Yahiko was a pretty good, fun kid character. And he's come such a long way. And we get to see how far he's come when Yahiko returns the Sakamoto to Kenshin. And with the Sakamoto in his hand, you get this beautiful silhouette shot of just Yahiko handing it up to Kenshin, and Kenshin with the scar clearly visible through the silhouette. And basically the next thing we see is everybody getting ready to leave. I mean, we get to see that shot of Kenshin in the bamboo field when he goes to draw the Sakamoto and all of a sudden his body's racked by pain. And it's clear that Kenshin's not doing anywhere near as well as he acts like he is. But he's Kenshin. He's not going to tell anybody that. And he makes the comment that even though it may just be for a short time, he hopes the Sakamoto serves him well. It's like, oh no, Kenshin, no. And then we basically just see Kenshin and them on the boat with the 3 newbies, of course. They're getting dragged along because Kaoru says she's got a plan. But after this, honestly, is where the chapter shined for me the most, which is where I expected that to be the end of the chapter. I honestly did. I had moved on to One Piece 884 in the notes and was getting ready to start jotting down some notes for it. When we get to see Yahiko still standing there, his hand up, and then he turns around and walks away. And we get to see from his perspective, his thoughts on the fact that he couldn't master the Sakamoto. And that he's chosen the Shinai. And as he walks forward, we see that he's talking about how I'm getting emotional because it's so well done. He's talking about how he's not angry, he's not sad. He's just a little lonely. And you get to see this huge double spread panel of all of Yahiko's memories being with Kenshin. And you see Yahiko as he is now, and you see Yahiko as he was as a kid running forward. And it really hammers home the point that most likely Yahiko's probably not going to see Kenshin again. And it hit me so hard. Because I do really love these characters. And getting to see Yahiko being consumed by his memories here as he tries to live with the fact that he doesn't know if he'll ever see his friend and mentor again. And that despite the fact that he's lived his entire life to this point trying to be like his mentor, he'll never be like him the way he wants. It just, it's such a good chapter. And then, of course, he gets back to the dojo, and he runs into Tsubame, and Kaoru had asked her to help out at the dojo, and she recognizes he's a little lonely. And he asks her to move in. And then the chapter ends with going from an emotional roller coaster like that to just the cliffhanger of the century, in my opinion, which is seeing Sanosuke's back. I love me some Sano. Can't wait. I don't know how he's going to wind up in Hokkaido with everybody else, but he will, somehow. He will. Can't wait. So next up we have 884, and remember when I was talking about how we had some great chapters this week? Because, oh boy, 884, One Piece, who is that? The Kong gun connects, Katakuri lands on his feet, Luffy's figured it out, Katakuri slams his head on the ground at one point when he gets schneidered to stop himself from falling on his back. That's great. I love that he's still so true to his character of, I choose when I'm on my back. Nobody else does. And yeah, basically we find out that exactly as one of our theories was last week, that Katakuri can only use his observation haki when he's calm. If he's not calm, then he can't focus to be able to use his observation haki. He tells Luffy that they're back to square one as he summons his donuts of mochi and summons arms out of them, which is, by the way, one of the sickest things I've ever seen in One Piece. That's amazing. I love it. Of course somebody like Katakuri would have a way to extend their reach. That's great. But he tells Luffy they're back to square one, and they really aren't. I've seen a lot of people complaining about this because, like, oh, here we go. This is going to turn into Dressrosa. And it's like, yeah, it possibly could. I hope it doesn't, but it possibly could. And with Roger's base review, he brought up a lot of points as to how it could be more like Dressrosa and how that wouldn't be a great thing. And it's entirely possible. I'm hoping it's not, though. Because Katakuri says they're back to square one, but we also saw how easily he got angry, and Luffy now knows his weakness. Luffy has shown before that he does not mind taunting his enemies if it brings them into an easier way to hit them. So, even without realizing it, I feel like Luffy's going to make him mad again. But, we'll see. We'll see. There's also some other things that happen this chapter. Pound is outside the factory. I don't know where that's going, but that's got to be there for a reason. Pound has been kind of a joke up to this point, and I'd like to think that there's some reason he's here. other than just wanting to see his daughter. I mean, it makes sense for his character, but it just feels a little weird that he tagged along this whole way and he's kind of just there. Maybe he'll be able to slow down Big Mom. Who knows? Oven is outside as well, and he's kind of new. We've heard about him before, but he's kind of a new introduction. And it's still super late in the arc to be introducing new characters, which is another point that Roger Space made as well, that, yeah, it looks like Sanji's probably going to fight him, but if Sanji fights him and Luffy fights Katakuri, then that means we've got another, 16 chapters probably before 1 a.m. rolls around. We'll see. I have hopes that these fights will be wrapping up pretty soon. I mean, the Sanji Oven fight hasn't even started yet and probably won't start next chapter either, but we'll see. There's this really solid moment. It's one of my favorite moments in the whole chapter, where Pudding's like, Sanji dear, Luffy's in trouble. He's fighting Brother Katakuri, and Brother Katakuri's never lost. Not even once. And Sanji's like, well, there's a first time for everything. And today's his unlucky day. I was like, oh, my boy Sanji. My boy is over here just repping his captain, and Pudding starts to smoke from it. She's loving Sanji being confident. And then you get the actual favorite moment of the chapter for me, which is Aladdin and Praline, where we knew they were still hanging around. We knew they could still be really important to the plot. And Praline is singing all of the sea slugs away from their post, leading them back to... I'm so sorry. I'm still very tired. Leading them back to away from their post so that the Straw Hats can escape. Now, of course, we know they're not escaping, but it also means they can't be tracked. And with Praline singing her fun little song about how it's a weekend off for the sea slugs, they all look super happy too, which is great. And I love that Aladdin and Praline still won't let Jinbei just do it alone. They're still there to back him up. Even though Praline is turning against her family, she doesn't care because she's in love with Aladdin. What's it matter? And Aladdin wants to help Jinbei. And she does too, honestly. So I thought that was a really great touch. I thought that her using the abilities that she has to be able to do it is also great. And, when Jinbei finds out, I'm sure he'll be really appreciative. But great chapter. Great chapter. Moving on to Golem Hearts 2, Visitor. Limik is going to die. Limik might already be dead because of the way this chapter goes. And I didn't want him to die. I talked about it last week. I didn't want Limik to die. But I expected Limik to die. Because the dad character normally dies. That's just the way it is. And Limik was too good a human being to not die. And it hurts to say that. Because again, I call back to the parallels of Dr. Hiroduke. But it's just the way it is. Limik was going to die. And to see the town treat Noah differently and everything be going great, it was just like, yeah! But it was going too well. And Garbo shows up, and he's garbage. I love him. He's a great villain, but he's garbage. And he wants Noah. And when Limik says no, Garbo destroys the house. And this is where things kind of spiral out of control. So at one point, Garbo just, slashes at Noah with a knife. And Limik gets super angry. And he's like, what would you have done if he wasn't a golem? And Garbo's like, I would have been disappointed. I was like, oh, I love this guy. He's such a good villain because he's a terrible human being. And he loves it. He gets super excited when Limik can't really do anything. But when Limik sees that Noah's angry, he swallows his rage. He pushes it down. And he kind of smiles at him. And tells him that he'll just have to live without a house anymore. He can do it to calm Noah down. And then Garbo's like, that's respectable. But we're leaving now. And turns around to leave. And Limik's like, hey, no, you gotta leave my son. He's my son. You gotta leave him here. And Garbo has him attacked. And Limik tries. He really does. He tries to use some Golem Arts on the military golem. But it's got a padlock on it, which means only the person who made it can make adjustments. And it punches him. And that punch is visceral. It's so powerful. Like, just looking at that punch, you could tell that stuff was broken. Just, oh man, that's such a... And Limit goes flying. Noah breaks the hand off and runs to Limit, and that's when we see Limit impaled on a piece of his own house. He's in bad shape. But even though he's in bad shape, he straightened his glasses, pats Noah on the head, and tells him to be the best arcanist the world's ever seen. No mistaking it. At this point, I'm nearly crying, because I really liked Limit, despite the fact that we'd only seen him for 2 chapters. And Noah's absolutely crying. And then Garbo shows up again. And the look on his face is just like, oh, he's dead. How unfortunate. And the Garbo and the Golem, well, the Golem anyway, takes one step into Noah's house and Limit's house, and Noah goes berserk. Cuts the thing in half, slices right across Garbo's face and down his body, because he used Paladin on his own. He turns around to talk to Limit to tell him that he did it on his own, and Limit doesn't respond. And Noah collapses. And we get to see this mysterious stranger see the townspeople begging Limit to hold on as we cliffhang. And it feels a little... Because again, we saw reference to that stranger earlier when Garbo was eating. It feels a little weird for them just to show up here, but obviously they have to, because they're the one that's going to be taking Noah on the rest of this adventure. It was very clear from the cover art that this person was going to show up at some point. A couple moments that I absolutely adored about this chapter, though. Noah telling Garbo and the Golem to get out of his house. Garbo saying that he can't keep his desires in check. And the callback of just the guy that got away from last chapter being the one that brought Garbo here. Like, that's perfect. Of course, he got away. He sold that information to the person who would pay it. Like, it's really clever to me. Really clever. But this is a great chapter. R.I.P. Limit, you will be missed. You were great. We will move on. We are almost 30 minutes into this review, and we've barely passed 4 series so far. And there's like 5, 6 more to go, so let's do it! That's why we have timestamps, so people can skip to what they want to see. Next up is The Promised Neverland 62, Indestructible Monsters. So remember when we said things were going to get bad? Things have gotten bad. Both Emma and Ray almost died this chapter. The Nameless Man leaves. He's going to watch from nearby. The pistol reveals to be a modified pistol, which can shoot loaded cartridges, and they fire a net onto the man-eaters. This is pretty cool. These pistols do exist in real life. They're a little bit bulkier than the one that we see in the manga, unless there's some newer models that I haven't seen. But they absolutely do. You slot the cartridge in, you can fire a flare, you can fire a net, you can fire a smoke gas, you can fire tear gas. You could even, I guess, fire laughing gas, but I don't know. I guess there's probably some military applications for that. Wouldn't work on these guys, though, because these guys have no sense of humor, as they eat their own to get out of there sooner, which I thought was a great touch. These demons have been living in a world where they used to hunt humans, and there are no humans anymore to hunt. So they'll eat anything, even their own, if it means that they're able to get to their prey faster. I also really liked how Nameless Man was saying that it didn't matter how fast they were. It didn't matter how tough they were. If they couldn't think faster, then they were going to die. And unless they know how to kill them, it's all over. And Ray just goes down the line. Everything they've learned. Where's the weakness? Where's the weakness? Where's the weakness? Calling back to something that we referenced here on this show. Back when they were talking with Sanju. Because Ray remembers that Sanju had mentioned that humans and demons had fought. And there had been losses on both sides hundreds of years ago, which means even humans from way back then had figured out how to kill demons without guns and things like that. He gets pinned, and right about when he gets pinned, he remembers that the weak point has to be the eye. Look at the mask that they wear. Look at everything else, which is something we talked about early on as well in this show, which is the eye was probably the weak point since they had masks to cover up their eyes. And it turns out it's the central eye. And maybe that's why they have so many, is to try and throw that goal off, but now that we know it's the central eye, we should be able to work with that information. Emma, of course, kills it instantly with her bow, because she's a great shot. And we get to see a little bit of a jump forward in time. Not by much, but by a little bit of time. As the Nameless Man shows up and congratulates them. Emma tells him they're still alive, and he agrees. And actually seems rather proud of them, honestly. Ray takes stock of how much ammo he has, and that's when we find out that even after finding out the eye was the target, they still missed quite a bit trying to hit the eye later on. And Ray's got 33 rounds left, and they've barely started the journey. So I'm very curious to see how this goes. I was kind of afraid that having all this extra ammunition would make things too easy, but I'm very appreciating that, very much appreciating that they've already been brought down to this level. Because Emma can make more arrows, but they can't make more ammunition on the fly. So, very good chapter. Very good chapter. Next up, we have Robot Laserbeam 32. The Daizon Open has begun. And Yada makes his second shot on hole 5 to start off this chapter. And we get to see that Yada it's a good shot, but he's kind of a mediocre golfer. He varies from good shots to bad shots pretty quickly. We also get to see Robo making some good shots, of course, but they're not his best shots. He's definitely made better, and we've seen them. And we get to see that there are references made that Robo's just warming up right now. This is his warm-up. An official tournament is his warm-up. That's great. To be fair, he missed warm-up, so it makes sense. But Suzaku shows up, and he's still just as creepy as always. He's got his creepy ring eyes. As they almost light up as he hungrily watches for Robo's skills. Due to a gust of wind, Yada and Robo both wind up in the trees, and Yada takes his shot, which should honestly be a pretty easy shot, and he gets pretty worked up, grazes a tree, and makes it through, and Shosato calls him out on it internally. He's like, what are you get so excited for? What's wrong with you? Robo's shot is a lot less space, and Yada tells himself that he would have given up on it, but Robo knows how he shoots, and he shoots it straight, because it's that laser, straight through the tree line. It lands in front of Yada's, and it's still not anywhere close to some of the best shots we've seen from Robo, but the level of focus in Robo's eyes is crazy. And Sho is amazed, and feels the same level of threat from Robo that he does from Yozan. And it really goes to show that even while making some of these not as great shots as we've seen, but better shots than he used to make for sure, Robo is super focused at all times. He's not playing around. He's not taking it easy. He's laser focused. Pardon the pun there. And he wants to win. And he's going to win. He's going to be a great pro because he can focus like that. There's a really good call out here to the fact that Robo doesn't pause when preparing to take the shot. He sees it, he takes it. Just boom. And Sho basically comments on how he shot that as if he had just been on the fairway shooting it. So yeah, because that's what Robo does. Once he's positive he can make a shot, he just makes it. So really good chapter. A little on the shorter end, but that's okay because we had some really long chapters and other stuff this week. Really good chapter. Next up we have Food Wars 238, The Queen's Tart. This is a good chapter. We spend a lot of time focusing on how Momo made her dish, but that's fine because it's a very different dish than what we normally get. Like when we spent almost an entire chapter talking about Takumi's Doppio Mentaluna pizza, I was like, okay, I get why we're doing this, but we've seen Takumi make pizzas before. We know how he made them last time. There's some small changes, but we didn't need to super focus in on it. I guess for the sake of viewers that may not have people that may have picked this up late, we did, I guess. But still, this is a brand new dish that we've never seen before. Apple rose tarts, using damask roses in the recipe, and boiling flower petals. I don't know why I said bringing. I'm reading my notes, and I'm still not able to read correctly. Guys, I'm still real tired. Boiling flower petals to make a light syrup is really difficult. I've tried when I was a chef, and it's not easy. It's not easy at all. In fact, it's something that I tried once for a special order at the bistro that I worked at, and I was like, never trying this again. Because I was able to get about like half of it correct, and the other half just became a mess that got into the syrup, and it was not great at all. But, so mad respect to Momo here. But even with that, to combine all of that with the rest of the work, which is very exacting and very draining. And she seems fine. She took the time to crush the tarts correctly while still doing all this. She made the basket a bread basket while doing all this. She weaved that bread basket. It's crazy to me the level of presentation that she put in on it. And it's no surprise that Sayuri and Une are completely drawn in by this and are having a tea party. Because Momo went all out. And Momo is so much tougher than I expected her to be. When it comes to cooking, there's more than just making a good meal. Presentation is also very important. If someone made the best meal you've ever seen, or the best meal you've ever tasted, but it looked like trash on the plate, you wouldn't eat it. Even though it tasted great, you still wouldn't eat it. So you need equal parts presentation and cooking. And one or the other can lack sometimes if the other is masterful, but here Momo has hit both, and that's crazy good. My favorite thing about the chapter, though, isn't how great Momo's work is and how hard of an effort she put into it. It's seeing Megumi's reaction. Because I expected everybody's making the comment of like, who could beat this? I'm like, oh no, Megumi's gonna lose all courage. Nope. Megumi's great. She's unfazed. She's laser focused on what her coaches taught her. And we see her dressed up like a boxer, ready to punch through. And that was great. I love it when Food Wars goes out of its way to do other callbacks to other series. Because this is clearly Baki the Grappler or a Hajime no Ippo reference here. She even has the moment where she's hitting her foot against the mat to try and get a little spring in her step. Like, it's great. I love it. I absolutely love it. So, great chapter. Great chapter. Again, we'll see more of it next week. And I kind of jumped over most of the actual preparation because there's not really much to talk about other than how impressive it is. But this was a really good chapter. Next up, we have Black Clover 132, The Victors. And I'm really torn on this chapter. I'm going to let you know right now that I'm really torn on this chapter. Juno versus Rill. The rest of their teams are fighting, but honestly, they're not important at all in this fight. They might as well have just sat back in a chair and watched. So, Yuno has to have a form change too, because Asta does. And so he has one that lets him store Belle's power inside himself. And there's some really good jokes there with Belle, because we all know that she's in love with Yuno, and about how she's becoming one with Yuno. It kind of makes him look like Oberyn, King of the Fairies. And I assume that's the point. But he gets one wing on the opposite shoulder from the one that Asta got, because the two of them together basically make one character. And Rill gets super excited and draws a wyvern with a woman's face. It's like a harpy wyvern, and he calls it a mystical dragon. And I was like, okay, what's going to happen from here? Are we going to get a cool, like, up-close Windblade versus Harpy Dragon Feather Wing fight? No, we get a Kamehameha meet. We get a Gohan versus Cell moment. As Rill's Mystic Dragon breathes a beam, and Yuno fires out a beam, and the two beams meet, and Yuno's getting all excited about how he's going to beat a captain, and he's won, and Asta's covering his eyes, because he's so angry that he's not the one out there fighting Yuno. And Rill's getting super excited and breaks his own crystal with his power, and Yuno wins. Here's why I'm torn on this chapter. Because Yuno having a transformation doesn't surprise me. I expected it. Because Asta has one. So, of course, Yuno would also get one. It makes perfect sense. You viewers that have been longtime viewers of me will know that my opinion on Black Clover is a bit torn in that I love every character except for Asta and Yuno, really. Because Asta and Yuno, there's nothing wrong with them. They just don't have a lot of personality, which is a weird thing to say because you go, well, Asta's got a lot going on. Like, well, no, Asta has a lot going on, but he doesn't have a lot of personality. His character is basically, I'm a good guy, and I'm going to do what needs to be done, and I'm going to get angry and fight. And I don't like it when you talk bad about your friends. And I'm going to be a magic knight. I'm going to be the king. And it's like, okay, that's shonen protagonist. I can live with shonen protagonist. I prefer a shonen protagonist that has a bit more going on. But, I can live with it. If you boil any character down to their bare roots, you're going to get something very similar to that. That's a shonen protagonist. Not all, but most. Deku is definitely not that. And I think that's why it stands out so much, is that Deku is not stereotypical good guy. Even though he does stereotypical good guy things, Deku is a lot more, there's a lot more personality there because he's worried about stuff. He doesn't think he can do everything. And there are times where he questions himself. Whereas Asta is just always, yeah! Counter that with Yuno, because again, I think the two of them are supposed to make a character. They're two halves of one whole, basically. And it makes sense for them to be that way. Don't take this as me bashing Asta, because I actually think the two of them making one character is really interesting. Because they're clearly supposed to be foils for each other, and they kind of took up what the other lacked as children, and I think that's really cool. The problem is when they're not both on screen at one time, it's very obvious. And so when you have Yuno out here, Yuno is power. Yuno is strength. Yuno is a complete focus that Asta gets when he thinks of Yuno, or when his friends are threatened that he doesn't normally have. And Yuno gets angry, and Yuno gets excited when he thinks of Asta, and otherwise he doesn't normally have that. And so for Yuno here, it's just like, I'm going to fire this beam because Asta's not here. That's what it feels like to me. And let me know in the comment section below if you don't agree, if you think that these two characters are fine on their own. But when the other one's not there, to me, both of them are lacking. And that's unfortunately the risk that you run by making two characters that are one character. And so Yuno versus Rill to me is just like, well, Rill's having a good time. And Yuno's getting excited that he might win, so he can show Asta that he won. But that's it. And so when Yuno does win, this is another reason why I'm torn, is because that was my negative. My positive is that Yuno didn't beat Rill. Rill beat himself. Rill broke the crystal with his own power because he was having too much fun and wasn't paying attention. And that's great, because that means that we didn't have Yuno beating a captain. In actuality, if you look at it, Asta beat more impressive opponents. Because Asta beat two vice captains. And Yuno didn't beat anybody really super important. Except, I guess he did beat his own. He beat one of his own, like, higher ranking, not vice captain, one of his own higher ranking guys from his own group. But at the same time, Asta beat more high level enemies than Yuno did. And since Yuno didn't beat Rill in a straight up fight, we now have that Rill is clearly stronger still. And that's great. I love that it didn't bring Yuno to this other tier. Yuno was on a par with Rill, but Rill hadn't done everything he could do yet either. So that I really appreciated that. That's a great touch. I don't want either of the two of them to advance above each other too much. So Yuno's got to Asta's strength level, and Asta's out of it and angry. And next chapter we get to the next arc, which is the selection of the Magic Knights to try and find the traitor and stuff. So sure, let's do it. Next up, we have Dr. Stone 34, Sneaky Grand Bout Strategy. This is a great chapter, too. Like I said, we had some really great chapters this week. Everything to do with Rurouni trying to figure out Senku's last name and then falling unconscious. See the look on, or falling under a coughing fit, not unconscious. Seeing the look on Senku's face and being like, I gotta know what she's talking about. After all this is over, we gotta have a conversation. We get to see all the cheating planning and how that immediately falls apart as Kinro faces Magma in the first bout. Senku makes some, like, homebrew tonic to pump him up using Sweet Leaf and a few other things. And Genro drinks the whole thing and eats all the ingredients. So Suika goes to get some more, of course. And Mantle is listening, and Mantle tells a very obvious lie. And Kohaku doesn't want to risk it because she cares too much about Suika. And so she runs off, and everybody's like, oh, well, if Kohaku doesn't make it back, then it looks like she'll be disqualified if she doesn't make it back in time for her match. She absolutely is going to make it back. There's no worries there. Suika's not in any danger, so it's fine. Unless Mantle kicked her in, and even then Suika can swim. Can she? I don't remember if Suika can swim. Either way, should be fine. Magma offering Kinro to lick his boots and join him, and Kinro just going, no. And then telling him that he's not the fighter Magma knew, that he's going to fight fair for his friend's sake. And it really stands out when you think about it. When we first met Kinro and Genro, they were kind of loners sitting on the edge of the village guarding the bridge. And they've been roped into all these different things that Senku has made them do. Yeah, they have become their friends. And Kinro doesn't want to lose. He's fighting for something far greater than power, and we see this when he's starting the offense on Magma. Granted, he still needs to be able to see. If he could see, I think he could probably win this fight. And I expect him, honestly, to lose. Because I expect Chrome to be the one that beats him. But we'll see. There's a part of me that's shipping Chrome and Rurouni, so I hope Chrome wins. But hey, we'll see. We'll see. This was a really good chapter, though. I really appreciated it. And I'm looking forward to next week's, for sure. Next up is Blue Exorcist 95. We find out that Yukio wasn't the shooter. Even though it was pretty clear that he was, the shot came from somewhere else. So that makes sense. He did seem pretty shocked right after the shot happened. So I'd assume we had talked about, actually, that might be the case. Shura grabs him by his lapel and pulls him up and looks him in the eye. And that's when she sees the eye. Almost immediately, he's arrested again. And they start saying they're going to do some tests. But at this time, Paladin is on the run because the artificial Ganon Gate is opened. And the world is overcome by this wave of power. Rin feels it immediately. Doesn't know what it is. Acts like nothing happened, I guess. Felt a little strange to me that he never asked about it, but hey, it's fine. He's got bigger concerns, like the fact that his brother may die. There's also a really weird moment where Yukio is clearly in the truck that Shura is driving when they run into Rin. And Rin asks about him. And knows he's back there. And demands Shura let him see him, and Shura tells him no. And so Rin goes back to the dorm, and immediately says he's going to go rescue Yukio, and I was like, but couldn't you? Because he makes the comment that he doesn't care if he has to run away with him, and if they get labeled as traitors or whatever. So why wouldn't you just cut open the truck right then? We don't see any great revelations happening on the way back to the dorm where you get to think about it or anything. So if you know he's in the truck, just jump in the truck. Like, grab a hold of the bottom of the truck or something. It just seems a little weird to walk 100% away from him just to do this prison break. And I get it. It was so that he could get his friends to help him. And you could see that his friends were still going to help him. And they could all be a team together. And they could get in trouble helping him. So that they could make a big disturbance. So that Ren could break into Yukio's room. And Yukio looks at him as we cliffhang. And there's clearly going to be a big moment where Yukio's like, I don't want to go with you because I don't know what's going on anymore. And Ren's going to have to try and beat some sense into him. I'm going to be honest. I really loved everything to do with Yukio finally going off the deep end and trying to shoot himself. And then everything to do with Yukio trying to shoot Mephisto. But at this point, Faust, I guess. But at this point, I'm just so... I'm ready for Yukio and Ren to be able to move on, because this feels exactly like what happened before, but it was Ren that was doing this to Yukio. And so, yeah, both brothers need a chance to do it, but I'm ready for this. Ready for the brothers to be together again, and working together again, and not to be yelling at each other again because one of them isn't listening, I guess. I don't know. We'll see how it goes. That moment of leaving Yukio in the truck really bothered me, followed by what immediately happened. So this chapter is not a great chapter call out for me. It really, really bothered me. But I don't know. Maybe it's just supposed to show that Ren's kind of dumb sometimes. Next up, we have Full Drive number 3, Dan versus Atsushi. We get our handshake. Baron thinks it could have been cooler. We learn that she and Atsushi have been friends for a long time. We find out that... Also, I want to point out, by the way, as soon as we learn that, there's no comment of oh, does she like him or anything? That's great. I love it when series don't immediately do that, because people can be friends and not have any romantic attachments. Atsushi's focus is on his backhand drive, the Chiquita, named after the type of banana. Dan uses his loop drive. It surprises Atsushi, and Marin gets super proud of him, and Dan gives her a thumbs up. I love these two characters. I love every interaction the two of them have. I love that Marin has kind of taken ownership of Dan. And when he's doing well, she's happy. And when he's not, she's sad. As we see throughout this chapter. And it makes sense because she brought him to this school. Even if there is no romantic connection, it makes perfect sense that she would be proud of him and would be upset when he's losing because she brought him here. If there is a romantic connection, then that's the best way to show it. So we'll see how that goes as the story continues. Like I said, even if this doesn't continue in Jump, I will still read it because I love Full Drive so far. Atsushi's able to return the loop drive, but only just. And as Dan tries to fight back against Atsushi, and he's excited to see the Chiquita again, we get to see that Marin is talking about with Ito about how fun it is to watch Dan play. The match gets to 10-10, evened up. Both are fired up at this point. And this is when we see Marin get a little sad, because she's like, Atsushi hasn't pulled out all his tricks yet. But neither is Dan. And when Atsushi throws out his regular Chiquita, Dan rising counters right as it passes over the net and starts to go high. Atsushi is amazed that Dan would even try something like that. And goes for another handshake, and Dan's like, "You're no good." She's like, "What?" And I was like, "Oh no, Dan, don't be him now." And then Dan's like, "No, you held back." And Atsushi's like, "Yeah, I did." And Dan has this really good moment where he's like, "I knew you were going to use a regular Chiquita, because if you had accepted me as your rival, you would have been using those better ones right from the start." And Atsushi's just like, "Yeah, you got me. You got me." Ito asks Dan what he wants to do now, and Dan just tells her that if he'd known about the Chiquita, he would have won even if Atsushi was giving his all, and asked to join the school. So, very excited to see more Full Drive. Very excited to see where it goes. These characters are great. These matches are great. I didn't know how much I love table tennis. And I want to see more. And like I said, even if there is no romantic connection there, I think the interactions between Dan and Marin are some of my favorites between characters. So yeah, I absolutely want to see more of the character growth that comes from this. Dan is super hungry for battle, and I love it. So, great chapter. Finally, ended off this week, we have Seraph of the End 62, and I really enjoyed this chapter. Seraph of the End has been hitting some weird notes for me lately, where I loved the first part of the story, and then the middle of the story that we have right now anyway, kind of bogged down for me, and this newer stuff has been great. Everything to do with Kailuk taking Cruel on a drive date while she's still on fire, and he's super like, da, 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 da. I love it. I love it so much. The fact that she is thinking about how the pain is almost normal now, because she's been feeling it for so long. No, instead she's focused on the fact that she recognized her brother Ashera was around. And we know, of course, if this wasn't reveal enough, we had thought already that Ashera is Asuramaru, which is inside Yu's sword. We get a really good moment where Asuramaru is talking to Yu, even as the drugs are trying to take over, and asking him what he wants to be, as Asuramaru himself is trying to hold back the drugs from taking over Yu's system. And when he comes back to himself, Yu reveals that he was, of course, listening. And he lets Asuramaru know that, hey, if you need some help, friends are friends, I'll help you out. There's some great banter here, as Asuramaru is just like, no, I didn't ask for your help. And why are you so trusting anyway? And there's some really good moments, immediately followed by Asuramaru being like, no, you know what? I want to know. I want to know. Why are you so self-sacrificing? And like digs into Yu's memories. And man, Yuichiro has some rough memories. I love that it starts out with the loss of the entire family to Farid. And then he's like, no, this wasn't it. This wasn't the moment. And we see the attack by his dad. He's like, nope, this isn't it. And then we get to find out that, we knew that Yu had been tested and treated as an experiment before. But to see him locked in this cell with this woman talking to him, and then to come out of this memory, and Asuramaru be questioning him about it, and him just not remember anything. And if this was any other character, we would either get a super mopey, like, no, I don't remember my past. Or like, it doesn't matter. We're making memories now. But instead, with Yu, the immediate comment is, that just makes me like you. We're amnesia twins. Because Yuichiro is a character that is so so badly tortured by all the different things that have happened that he comes around on the other end of the scale. And it's just like, it's okay though. Because we're going to do better with what we have now. And I'm going to smile because I have reason to smile right now, and I'm going to enjoy what I have right now. And I love that so much about Yuichiro. Immediately, he's like, I've made a lot of good memories too, though. And we're going to keep making good memories. So it's all good. And Asurumaru's just like, how can you be like that? And he's like, hey, just so you know, you're being used. You're being manipulated. And my master shouldn't be manipulated like this. And Yu's like, okay, yeah, you're right. I'm being manipulated. You're absolutely correct. Yu 100% knows that Gurren is using him. He knows that the vampires are using him. He knows that the powers that he himself uses are using him. And there's a really fun play on words here where Asurumaru is like, or at least that's what I think your partner would say. And I was like, is he being tsundere or is Mika saying this stuff? And then Yu is like, my partner. And he's like, yeah, he's waiting for you right now. If you don't answer, since he's been talking to you, he'll probably get pretty angry. And you see Yuichiro open his eyes and there's Mika. And so it still works both ways, but I really appreciated that. Because Mika's the only real family that Yu has left. And, of course, the wording also works for the shippers. Which is fine. I don't personally ship the two of them together, but hey, it's whatever. Anybody can do whatever they want. They're absolutely life partners in a way, because they're never leaving the other side if at all possible. But this chapter cliffhangs in a really cool way, where Mika tells you where they are, and they find out you're in Nagoya, in Gurren's old home, where the labs are, where they did all the testing. There's also a really good moment where Yu wakes up, and Mika asks him, this again? Because he's in the recovery vat. And Yu's like, yeah, this again. So, all in all, this was a really fun chapter. I very much appreciated it. I'm personally a big fan of Spirit of the Weapon bonding with the guy who wields it. And that's what this chapter was mainly about. But we also got to see a little bit of Cruel and the stuff going on with her. So, that was fun, too. Got our confirmation that Asurumaru is a Shera. And I was like, yep, okay. That's good to have. So we will bring into the lightning round now that it's been almost an hour this week. We Never Learned 38 on a Clamorous Night. X Cannot Study. Great chapter. Wish there'd been a little bit more for Furuhashi, and I wish that there'd been a little bit more with Asami, but otherwise this was a really fun chapter. Looking forward to finding out who the mysterious silhouetted girl is. Most likely going to be his sister or Sekijo. Could be a new person. We're going to find out. Great chapter. 2 thumbs up. Rurouni Kenshin, the Hokkaido arc. Rurouni Kenshin, the Hokkaido arc, chapter 3. Great chapter. 2 thumbs up. Very much enjoyed everything to do with Yahiko in this chapter. Seeing Sano at the end. Finding out for sure that Kenshin does in fact have something going on. Yahiko with his memories. And seeing himself running forward as a kid. Chasing after Kenshin. And the fact that he knows he might not ever see him again. I'm getting emotional again. 2 thumbs up. Great chapter. One Piece 884. Who is that? Great chapter. Despite the worries that it might be back to status quo, I really enjoyed most of this chapter. Especially the donut arms, man. And Luffy going, that's not Mochi! And then, of course, it absolutely is Mochi. Really, really good moment. Sanji telling Pudding that Katakuri's unlucky day is here because Luffy's going to win. And then everything to do with Prelude singing. We'll see if next chapter is going to be a problem or not with Back to Square One, but great chapter. I loved this one. Golem Hearts 2 Visitor, great chapter. Limmick, man. Oh, don't die on me, man. Don't die on me. Hang around. Hold on. Be at home so no one can come back and visit you at times. And everything to do with Garbo, man. Garbo's a garbage human being, but I love him as a villain. He's great. I hope he survives, honestly, so we can see more of him. Great chapter. Promised Neverland 62, Indestructible Monsters. I'm going to say great chapter. This was a really good one. Everything to do with them figuring out how to kill the things, with the fact that the Nameless Man did show some kind of pride and come back to him after they figured it out, because he honestly expected one of them to die. He even told him that. He'll come back and save the other one once one of them dies, because it'd be a lot easier to watch one than two. We also get that cool moment where one of the demons comes up behind him and he shoots it, and then everything to do with 33 rounds. Like, that's going to make things really tense later on, so good chapter, great chapter. Robot Laserbeam 32, good chapter. It was a little short, and we spent a lot of time focused on Yada, but seeing Sho Sato's internal monologue, seeing the stuff to do with Suzaku, and Robo taking his shots like always, being laser focused. Absolutely good chapter. Good chapter. Food Wars 238, The Queen's Tart. Great chapter. Absolutely great presentation. We spent a lot of time talking about the presentation, but that's what this chapter was really about, was to remind us that the plating is just as important as the cooking. And then the final moments of the chapter with Megami getting ready to go. I'm excited for next week. It hypes me up just thinking about it. Great chapter. Black Clover 132, The Visitors, dead even. This chapter has, or the Victors, not Visitors. This chapter had some great moments and some bad moments. Specifically, how quickly that match was over, that we didn't even really get to see the two fight. That everything that happened there is just But Rill taking out his own crystal so that the power balance is restored. Talking about how he's going to match up to Asta and getting his own form. All that stuff was good. It was just that everything else to do with how quickly the match was over. The fact the other teammates were completely worthless. That's down, so completely even for me. Next up, Dr. Stone 34, Sneaky Grand Bout Strategy. I really enjoyed this chapter. It wasn't like a great blowing up the air chapter, but it was really fun. I enjoyed it quite a bit. So, great chapter. Kenro is unfortunately probably going to lose, but I'm looking forward to seeing what kind of fight he puts up. So, great chapter. Blue Exorcist 95. I'm going to say it was a bad chapter, honestly. We spent a lot of time on the Gehenna Gate, and yeah, the power is in the world now, and now the veil is gone, and everybody can see all the monsters for exactly what they were. But the veil was already pretty weak to begin with, and we spent a lot of time focused on that without really any payoff for it. Everything to do with Ren leaving the truck for me is just... If he was willing to bust into one of his own organization's buildings to save his brother, why wouldn't he just draw his sword right then and cut open the back door of the truck and pull him out of there? If he'd done it quietly enough, sure, I wouldn't even have known. Bad chapter, in my opinion. Bad chapter. Full Drive 3, Dan versus Atsushi. Great chapter. Great chapter. Everything to do with finding out about the Chiquita. Everything to do with Marin and Dan's interactions this chapter. With Atsushi revealing he was holding back and telling Dan he's absolutely right. With Dan finally going to the school. Looking forward to seeing some more students. Some more matches. Absolutely love I almost said Loop Drive. Full Drive, and looking forward to more of it. And finally, Seraph of the End, Unremembered 62, Unremembered Trauma. Great chapter. I really enjoyed this. In fact, you know what? Great chapter. I really enjoyed this chapter this week. Everything to do with diving into used memories and coming out of it, and his first reaction being, we're amnesia twins. Telling Asaramaru that he doesn't care because he wants to make memories now. Because when he thinks back on the things he does remember, all he gets is sadness. Why would he care about his memories? He only wants to make good memories now. So yeah, I absolutely love this chapter. It was really good. And that brings us to the end of another exciting episode of the Weekly Shonen Breakdown. It's been almost a full hour. There was a lot to cover this week. My name is Trey. We have been the Full Spectrum. That's been Kylo. He's been blocking the glare. And you can see the glare on him now as the sun is rising higher in the sky. And I'm going to go to sleep. So we'll be back next week with some more Weekly Shonen Breakdown. Remember to always enjoy the full spectrum that Jump has to offer.